I'm Mike DePalma, Senior Channel Development Manager with Datto. We've been seeing small businesses especially being attacked at a high rate for the last several years, but that rate has accelerated since this pandemic has begun. The World Health Organization has shown that their attacks on them have increased five-fold since the end of March. And so what these criminals are doing is they're really taking advantage of the chaos that we're seeing. They see all the low-hanging fruit of unprotected networks, unprotected devices that businesses might be working with as they work remote, but they're also exploiting ways to get in. And we see these spear phishing attacks that we've seen for years. And now we've seen this shift where these criminals will come and it'll look like it's coming from the World Health Organization or the CDC. And it'll say somebody in your area has been infected. Click here to find out what your next steps need to be. That will then drive you to a form of malware that might infect your network as well as your business network. So we really have to be vigilant when we look at ways to protect ourselves and understand that the folks that are behind this are no longer the people in their basement doing these attacks so that they no longer have to get a real job. This is what organized crime has shifted to. This is what we're up against. So to think that you can just combat this simply with maybe some free hardware, free software, those things are just not going to help your business stay safe. And so when you look at a couple easy tips and ways to stay protected, it starts with understanding that yes, you are a target constantly. I go out and I do a lot of industry events. I'm on the road normally 3-4 days a week. And I get the question all the time, what are the chances that I'm going to get attacked? Easiest question you could ask me. It's 100%. There's a 100% chance you're getting attacked. It's just a matter of whether they're getting through and a matter of whether you have a plan in place to get that data back and get back to production without paying something like ransomware or losing a huge amount of data. And so understanding your risks is critical. And from that, you got to really put in place a formal policies and procedures. You need to know if something does happen, if you do get the scary red screen that you've just been attacked by ransomware. You need to know how to isolate that machine, who you need to call. That's where you really should be working with a third party to get a second set of eyes on that and make sure you've checked off every box. This is a time you should be doing a lessons learned and figuring out what happened, what were the pain points early on as we all kind of started working remotely or working in a hybrid environment. What did we need to do so that the next time we can be more proactive in terms of addressing some of those issues? So these policies and procedures need to be documented. They need to be in a place that not just the folks that are onboarding can take a look at, but that the current employees should be constantly reviewing. This is extremely, extremely important and very simple and inexpensive to do. It's something that you should be doing. When you look at some of the other tips, you start looking at just simply employee training. Piggybacking on that policies and procedures, the employee training needs to be ongoing. 91% of data loss and downtime occurs because of user error. What these criminals typically are looking for is not necessarily to use brute force to get into your network. They're looking for somebody asleep at the wheel, letting the door open so that they can get in and infiltrate a network. So there has to be constant training. What to look out for? What do I need to do in terms of keeping my network safe? And again, it can't be just something that you do as an onboarding. It has to be something that you're doing on an ongoing basis. Hopefully quarterly, maybe more often, or maybe just spot checks where you're doing some testing on making sure people are staying vigilant. When you look at just passwords, we see it all the time. I've been doing these presentations for 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years ago, the most common password 1234. You look at what it is now in 2020, some variation of password 1234. Maybe there's an exclamation point in there instead of the 1. Ooh, the criminals aren't going to figure that out. They can crack that in a matter of seconds. They're using software programs to go and run all of these numbers. So password management is key. You have to make sure that there is a password management policy in place for your business. Again, there's very inexpensive ways to do this. And again, it comes down to creating that culture of security. And never leave those devices alone. Most folks are working from home on a business device that has critical business software on it, critical business data on it. You leave that around, maybe there's a family member that comes in there, maybe there's a kid that comes in there and wants to go to YouTube or wherever websites they're going to. When I used to be on the road, it amazed me when I would be doing work from Starbucks, how many people would leave their laptop open as they went up and got coffee or went to the restroom and left it completely open. How are you possibly doing that when there's important business data on a public Wi-Fi that is leaving your business and that data so vulnerable? So make sure that you understand that this device needs to be locked, it needs to have a password that other folks aren't going to crack, even if it's somebody that's not doing it maliciously, just doesn't know what they're supposed to be going on or when they're on your computer. And to that point, you got to be careful of what you click on, especially now. You start going on social media from the same device that you're doing work from, and you're clicking on different articles or taking those surveys that everybody does. Those guys are all collecting data on you. And whatever that data is being used for, we don't know about. And so making sure that you're vigilant about it. If I'm working on a workstation, should I be going onto the same websites I would for my personal laptop? Would you do it from the office? Probably not. But again, people let their guards down when they're working from their kitchen or from their living room or their home office. We see this all the time. Criminals are preying upon this. They understand that people's guards are down. So make sure that that's something that your entire team knows they're not supposed to be doing. Simple things, making sure your antivirus is in place. There's a lot of great tools out there. That's not the space that I'm in particularly, but the one advice I'll give you, if it's free, there's a reason why it's free. You're talking about your business here. Make sure that you're making an investment into that to make sure that you're preventing as much of these bad actors from getting in as possible. And then it leads to your backups. Your last line of defense clearly is your backup. Make sure that you have a backup solution that you could trust and that's being tested and being verified. And that so if somebody asks you how much data are you at risk of losing if you're attacked or your systems go down, you can answer that question and say, hey, we've been taking hourly backups. We've been testing those backups. I know I'm only at risk of losing an hour's worth of data. And then you look at the getting your data back up. How are you going to get that data back into production? Make sure you can answer that question as well. How much downtime would you incur? And then try to put a dollar value on that. If I'm down for a week, how much money are we thinking here? So easy things you should be able to address. Again, getting a third party in there to take a look at your network, making sure you can answer those questions, definitely worth the time, definitely worth the investment. Now everybody's working remotely. Even when you weren't working remotely, most people are doing work from their mobile devices. Make sure there's a policy in place for that as well. If you're doing work from your mobile device, make sure that you have a password on there. Make sure that it's protected. Simple things like this. Again, it comes down to something that should be in your policies and procedures. And that goes also into just how you're testing the security. What's going on? Again, this is a real strong way to have a third party come in. Even if you have an in-house IT team, it makes sense to work in collaboration with somebody in the IT space that can come in, make sure all of those security measures are in place. And with these things, understand that we're all headed in the right direction. You've taken the 5 minutes of your day to take a look at this. We're heading in the right direction. We're all working. Security is not something that you could say, hey, I made an investment in last year, I'm all set. It's an ongoing process. So these documents need to be living documents that you can adjust as you start moving forward.